Hello there, Souls fans, and welcome to a very special video on a game called BloodBorne. A lot of information has leaked over the past month or so, and I feel I should bring everybody up to speed on information that you may or may not be aware of. Throughout the video, I'll be giving my own personal thoughts and opinions, with a little bit of speculation at the end. As always, there'll be links in the description to all the footage that I'm showing you now, so feel free, if you have time, to watch those to your heart's content. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop in the video. The first big news that I want to drop on everybody is the official release date for both Europe and the US. It is February 6, 2015. As of right now, there are two versions of the game announced. There's the normal game, which is $59.99, which is essentially just the base game of Bloodborne. And there's also a collector's edition, which is the Bloodborne game, a digital soundtrack, a steelbook case for the game, and also an art book. That'll run you $79.99. Whether that's worth an extra $20 is highly up to the person who buys it. For pre-ordered either the standard or the collector's edition, you'll get a alternate skin to a new element known as the Messengers. There's not a whole lot of information out there about the Messengers. I'm assuming it has something to do with an online aspect, whether it be like the orange soapstone from Dark Souls and Demon Souls, or it could have something else entirely. I'm not sure. Sounds pretty cool, so you'll have like different skins for it. So they finally showed off some new armor for Bloodborne. It's this dark crow-like aspect. If those who have played Dark Souls 1 should probably find it oddly familiar to the Crimson set, being the hat, the mask, and the long robes. The main difference being that it's black, and on the arms it seemed to have grown some sort of crow feathers. It's probably some interesting lore behind that, but I'm interested to see what it goes. As far as I know, there's no other armors introduced. It was just this one and the usual set that they've been showing over the past couple months. So it's pretty cool. Hope you guys enjoyed that. For this next segment, I want to go over weapons and overall combat approach that they've changed to Bloodborne. Even though it does feel familiar to the Souls series, they have made some subtle changes that I'll go over right now. Some of the new weapons you'll be using in Bloodborne are guns. Now I know that may irritate some of you, but From Software has done a very ingenious thing by doing this new mechanic. In a way, you won't be using guns in a traditional sense. That's right, you won't be popping headshots and blowing off limbs in this game. Instead, guns will now replace your shield hand, and they'll be used more of as a defense mechanism rather than an actual weapon itself. You'll be using them to finish off enemies with a low amount of health. You'll be also using them as crowd control for large mobs of enemies that will come at you, undoubtedly in Bloodborne. The one last thing that guns can also do is set you up for a critical strike, which I'll go more in detail here in a few moments. As of this recording, they've only showed off two guns. One is the pistol, which is basically your traditional pistol, which only fires off single shots, hitting only one enemy, not doing too much damage. The other is the shotgun and/or musket. The shotgun seems to do a bit more damage in comparison to the pistol, obviously. But it becomes almost useless, as shotguns do at further range, like it almost doesn't hit anything. But if you are at close range, it does seem to spread and hit multiple targets, doing some decent damage. Now the way that they have balanced guns is with ammo, or the lack of, rather. I've seen some players in the demo that I've recently seen and that I have in the description that go through the demo with only as much as 3 bullets. So it really puts a limitation on the guns and the guns themselves, and parrying for that matter. Now the primary weapons you'll be using throughout Bloodborne are basically melee. They've showed off quite a few new ones over the past month or so, so let's see what we have to work with. All the weapons seem to have some sort of secondary effect that can change or transform them into something enhanced, or something completely different. The very first weapon that they introduced was the saw blade / extended cleaver. When it's retracted, the saw blade seems to pull off combos faster, and they seem to do less damage, but when you extend it out, it becomes sort of like a long, large cleaver, which seems to do more damage, and of course you have a longer range. Another weapon they showed off was an axe, which can then be extended into a halberd. Much like the saw cleaver, it seems like the axe can do much better off at pulling off combos and does decent damage while having a shorter range, while the halberd, when extended, has a much longer range, obviously, and did a lot more damage without losing that much more speed, so it has like a trade-off. Now, one of the newer weapons that they showed off were these weird dual-wielding dagger-type blades. These weapons were really fast, and they chain combos together really powerfully. Now, the interesting part about these daggers were they kept sparking. Now, I don't know if that was like a taunt, or if that was just like the graphical power, or what I quite possibly believe could be a stance change. Now, I can't be sure. I didn't see the player use any different type of moveset with the daggers, but you guys go ahead and watch the footage, and feel free to let me know what you think. Now, the last two weapons that I saw were a giant hammer as well as a giant scythe. As far as the giant hammer goes, it did a lot of damage. It had very long range. It staggered the things that it was able to hit, but it moved really, really slow. It would seem that you would use it on something that was like hard to take down, such as a boss or an extremely hard and slow enemy. It has a lot of defense. The interesting thing about it was that it didn't really have a retracted version like a mace or something like that. When the player wasn't using the hammer, it simply rested on his back waiting to be used. The same thing goes with the scythe. I didn't catch a retracted version of it, but then again I only caught a glimpse of the scythe. But I did notice that it did move a lot faster. Now I want to go into detail on how these two types of weapons coexist with one another. That being the melee weapons and the gun weapons. Remember earlier when I talked about critical hits, parries, and or critical strikes? Well, that's where the guns come in. Now during combat, right before an enemy attack falls on the player, if you're able to get a shot off from your gun, with good timing the enemy will go into a staggered, stun-type state. At that moment, you'll have a small 1, 2, maybe 3 second window to pull off a parry, riposte, or and/or critical strike, which do massive amounts of damage. One way to counter this, though, is with the amount of ammunition in your gun. As of right now, there's no other way to parry an opponent. It's just basically with the gun. So, even if you get the timing down to an exact science, you're still limited to the amount of parries you can do, simply based on how much ammunition you have. You still can do backstabs. As far as there's no limitation on that, but it seems like the timing for the backstab is a little bit more precise. Like you have to be like right behind them. You can't be a little to the left or a little bit to the right. So it's more of a Demon Souls type feel to it. Now, what I really like about the combat in Bloodborne is that it seems to be more catered towards dual wielding and being aggressive, but at the same time remaining cautious and withdrawn. Not to say that you can't go through the game with your own favorite weapon, but FromSoft seems to want the player to adapt to their environment. What I mean by that is that FromSoft seems to want you to adjust your playstyle and take into account how many enemies are there, what type of enemies are they, and overall what you have at your disposal to give you the biggest advantage at that time. As opposed to you just only having like an Ujit Katana or a Claymore or a Zweihander for your entire playthrough, you'll now have something like an Ujit Katana, and maybe you can extend that out to a scythe. You'll also have, say, a pistol or a shotgun, all within the same confines of the same weapon layout. So it's very interesting stuff, and I can't wait to like test it out. Now the next thing I want to talk about is basically returning mechanics that I was able to spot throughout the trailers, as well as some new mechanics that they're introducing for the first time and or improved upon. One old mechanic that I spotted during one of the trailers was the return of the plunging attack. That may not be important to some, but for those of us who have gone back and played Demon Souls right after Dark Souls, have more than likely tried a plunging attack and then realized that FromSoft didn't utilize that yet, so that's pretty cool. One new thing that I found is the player can now pick up, find, and collect and throw these little pebbles or rocks at a enemy, sort of to like bait and draw them towards your direction. Normally, if you play the Souls game for the first time, usually that's the smartest thing to do instead of taking out a large mob, is to basically bait each one individually and take them out one at a time. Usually you could do that with an arrow, but it's just come to my attention that you can't. Arrows may or may not be in Bloodborne, so that's something to think about. One of the next aspects that I want to talk about is basically the healing and how it's changed. The Estus flasks have been taken out. They've been replaced by these things called blood vials. Blood vials will essentially heal your character. There's another way you can heal your character. If you look up in the top corner, you'll notice that the player does take, in fact, damage. But it's not permanent damage. There seems to be like a yellow bar below the health bar. And you have a small time frame. When you attack enemies, blood will spew out of the enemy and fall onto your character, onto their clothes and whatnot. And that blood will actually heal you. So blood seems to be a major factor if it wasn't already obvious by the name. And it hasn't really been revealed how you level up your character either. And I'm assuming blood's going to have a lot to do with that as well. But I'm not sure, so we'll see what happens. Alright, now the last part that I really want to touch upon is these interesting NPCs that seem to be walking around and a little bit of the co-op that we've learned so far. Now, as the player is walking around, he sort of encounters this weird guy who's sort of dressed similar to the player. And just out of nowhere, the fucking dude just like goes ape shit on these two werewolves that he reacts to them before the player even notices that they're there. And he literally fucking wipes the floor with them, like just straight iron tarkuses their ass without pretty much any help from the player, and then just sort of falls into a trance. It goes back to what he's doing. What's real interesting about it, though, is that the player, he doesn't really talk to the player. He just sort of like goes about his day. He has his own agenda. It really reminded me of Bjorn of Twin Fangs from Demon Souls, where if you free him from the cell, he'll help you out with a penetrative boss fight. You don't have to summon him or anything. He'll just like come into the boss fight and help you out. And he'll also distract the blue dragon at the end of Demon Souls, so you can get to King Alant. The dumbass will kill himself in the process, but nonetheless he'll still distract the blue dragon so you can get into the castle. So it leaves the question, are the NPCs like Are you guys part of a guild or a covenant? Did he just not attack the player because they were wearing the same outfit? Will he attack the player at all? Or is it just because the sun went down and he knows what's up, he knows monsters are coming out, and he knows what his job is? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure about that. This trailer earlier this week actually revealed, I thought was an actual NPC player that was fighting, but apparently, from what I've read, it's a co-op partner. The church against this boss fight. Now, one thing you may notice is that the other player doesn't have a hue around him. He's not red, he's not blue, he's not yellow, he's not white, he's not a phantom at all. He just looks like a normal player. That left me to question the entire online aspect in general. Now, From Software said it is going to be different from the Souls series. But it kind of makes me question now is, are there going to be invasions at all? Will you be able to invade players like the Soul series, or is it just going to be a completely different co-op experience in general? Will you still be able to summon people, or is it just like a co-op party going on now? I don't know. It's real interesting. I guess we'll have to wait a few more months to find out. And one last thing, I actually want to talk about the Cleric Beast. It's the boss fight that they keep showing over and over during the trailers and the gameplay that I've put up here. The player doesn't counter him. His moveset seems very similar to Manus, as in like he has the arm and he's sweeping it around a lot. It also did confirm another question that I had about the game is how do fog gates come into place. He actually walks into the arena with no fog gate at all. Then, as you can see, he tries to run back, and there's like this weird misty fog thing blocking his path. So fog gates are still there. They still sort of block off the boss arena. And yeah, the player's he's not doing too good against the Cleric Beast. In fact, I don't think I found any footage online to where somebody's actually beat the Cleric Beast, but nonetheless, it does lead me to wonder how far along in the game do you encounter this boss, if he's like one of the first boss, or if he's like the Mirror Knight, where you don't encounter him till like halfway through the game. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. So far, from what I've seen in the gameplay trailers and you know, gameplay demos and whatnot like that, the bosses that I've seen or that I could make out that look like bosses, they could just be regular enemies, I'm not sure, but the ones that look like bosses, they look very interesting. They look incredibly hard and, you know, very dark and very mystic. The guy who does the artist for this BloodBorne game definitely did a good job on designing some of these enemies. I really hope some of the bosses are interesting and, you know, fresh and new, and they don't get lazy with it. That's what I'm hoping for. With Hidetaka Miyazaki, though, at the helm, I'm pretty sure we're going to get some interesting and some fascinating boss fights. Now, this last little part before I end the video will basically be my, not necessarily a speculation, but a tribute, sort of like, in a way, I guess. It happened during the Gamescom trailer. I heard the voice of an NPC, a female voice. She says something that's probably very lore-heavy to the story, and it sounded very familiar to a certain NPC from the game Demon's Souls. I want you guys to go ahead and give a listen to it and tell me what you guys think.
And so the nightly hunt begins. Thou seekest soul power, dost thou not? Then touch the demon inside me. And so the nightly hunt begins. As for me, I am only here to tend to the flames. I keep the candles lit and serve the brave demon slayers who are trapped here.
Is that not the Maiden in Black's voice? Could just be the same voice actor, who knows? The games probably have nothing in common other than that. There's probably just a subtle nod or reference or maybe a homage to the old game. But nonetheless, I thought it was very interesting, and I got like all hot in the leathers because of it when I heard it. Anyway, that's all the news I have on BloodBorne and BloodBorne related news. All the footage that I've used in this video is all in the description. Go ahead and feel free to watch that at your own discretion. If you guys have videos of your own or opinions, go ahead and leave them down below. I'll come watch them. I'll go listen to them. Tell me anything that you like so far, things that you may want to change. And the game's not too far off now. It's a little over 4 months now. And February 6th, like I said, it's coming out. Until next time, bye-bye. Alright, wait a minute. I was just about to end the video, and then all of a sudden some more information got leaked. It did sort of remind me of something that I did want to talk about that I completely forgot about, was the BloodBorne alpha test. For those of you who don't know, yes, they are having a BloodBorne alpha test. They've been sending out invitations over the past couple weeks. I unfortunately did not get one. You can register if they did send you one on a PS4 Sony website. I'll put a link to that in the description. They did have a beta test for the Dark Souls 2, which was a very cool thing. I wasn't part of that. Hopefully they have a beta test for BloodBorne. Game only comes out in about 4.5 months, so hopefully they have a beta test for that. A lot more people get involved with that. There'll also be a website, Junkie Monkey, released a whole bunch of Covenant and multiplayer leaks. It's from the same guy who did the Project Beast from way back in the day before E3. But it's all leaked information, so it is all subject to change. It may or may not be true, but you guys can go ahead and check it out if you want. If all that stuff is true, then BloodBorne is going to be a very, very different game. But we'll see what happens. So now it is officially. See you next time.